Alright, so today we're doing a 1UZ-FE non-BBTI. This is a LS400 95 to 96. It's going to be an automatic version, so let's get into it. Right, so as we said, this is going to be a LS400 95 to 96. So we know that's correct because its part number is 89661 50251. What you also notice is the customer is having a dash to get all his instrumentation in, so we're going to go through that as well. But it is a completely brand new harness, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through all the pictures of the build process so you can see exactly how that looks, and we're back in a second. Right, so now you know what it looks like all underneath there. What we're going to do first of all is we're going to go through the layout. So there are some bit of custom add-ons to this one because of the dash as well. So we'll start from this end over here. So on your ECU you've got your 4 plugs that are going to plug directly into there. We've got the breakout that's coming over here to the fuse box. So that's coming from the harness. Then we've also got a engine speed indicator coming out here, and that's required for the dash. So that's actually engine RPM. Engine speed is what dash 2 refer to it as. And then the other side of that little branch point there, then we've got the other fuse box plugs that goes in there. So that's all very, very easy, and all the plugs are different, so you can't plug the one into the wrong space. We do also have the 2 Coolant plugs. So you've got your main one here with all your powers and your fuel pumps and everything, and then here's all your gearbox stuff on this one over there. Right, making our way to the grommet, which is over here, and that'll obviously go in the firewall. Coming out the other side of the grommet over here, we've now got the dash plug. So that's a 6-pin DTM plug that's got all the signals going to the dash. So what the customer's opted for is we're fitting a coolant temp sensor specific for the dash. We're also fitting an oil pressure sensor that works with the dash, so we can have all of that information to there. We've also taken the oil light to there, so we can have an alarm set up on the dash for when he loses oil pressure. Just in case the actual oil pressure sensor itself fails, so he still has that information to hand. Right, following on the other side of the grommet now, we've got our igniters. So again, we've left quite a bit of space before they join, before they go to the igniter. So these can go onto the firewall, right by the grommet if you want, onto the top of the strut tower here, wherever basically you'd like. They do need to be grounded, so make sure that if they are bolted directly to the body, that's absolutely fine. If you're using a bracket like you get on the standard one, again, just make sure that's bolted to the body and has a really nice good earth through the actual bracket that you're bolting it to. All right, so coming on from the grommet, we're then going to end up at the molded T-piece here at the back, and that's where it's going to split up into the 2 sections. So first we're going to go down here, and then we'll go back around the other side there. So this is quite a small in terms of outbreak section, so it comes straight down here. You can see you've got mounting holes there and there that you can use a P-clip just to hold it in place. Then we're going to come down through underneath the covers here, and we're going to break out underneath here, and that goes to your cam sensor for your left bank. So that plugs directly into there. Then you're going to come down here, and you've got a mounting point over here where you can clip the harness to over there to keep it in place. And then you're going to come down to the top here where it's going to break out. The one section is going to go to the coil, which plugs straight in over there. The other sections are going to go round the back and through that hole over there. So you should be able to see them popping around over there. The Lambda one does go through there as well. I just don't put it through because it's quite a bit, it's a bit of a squeeze to get it in there. It does go in there, so I don't want to do that twice. So just do it once when you get the harness on your side. One of the sections breaks out to the crank sensor, which is going to go again through that hole over there, come out to the bottom, and that's your crank sensor over there. The other section is going to break out, and that's going to then split into two again. And you'll see here's the T piece for you, Tom. So that's got a 1/8 NPT, 1/8 BSPT, and then you put your oil pressure switch in there. So we've got your plug for oil pressure switch, we've got your plug for your oil pressure sensor, and obviously the oil pressure sensor, which is going with you as well. Then you're breaking out and going down to your Lambda sensor, which plugs directly in over there. So again, we bring it out over here rather than coming down there, so we avoid any type of possibility of it being near an exhaust and any sort of heat source like that, so that keeps it out of harm's way. All right, so coming back along here, we're going to go to the back, and what I'm going to do now is we're going to go through the sections that break out of the boot here. So first of all, we've got our earth, which is going to go here. Now we're using the top hole on this one, not the bottom one over there. So we've used an M8 nut over there, but this top hole's got a much more flat surface. This is kind of like a cavernous hole in here, so don't use this one, use that one up the top there. We've also then got your starter knock harness, so that plugs in over there. And again, like all the rest of them, we've actually put two twin core shielded cables in here. So ever if you wanted to change over, we can actually wire Bosch wideband knock sensors to there. And obviously we can still get these ECU headers, but I have been informed by T they are end of life. So in the not too distant future, we won't be able to get these headers anymore. So just bear that in mind. So yeah, so we can change to wideband knock sensors if we need to. All the wiring is in there and already done for you. Then we've got our idle speed control and our injector sub harnesses. So you'll see they're all labeled up there, injector and ICS. Obviously one's a 12 pin and one's a 6 pin plug. They then go underneath the middle of the intake here. So you just take the middle section off the top there. Good time to replace the gaskets that are in there as well. And they go underneath and they pop out here, and then they go to all your injectors on both sides. And then they also pop out here and they go to your idle speed control, which is at the front over there. All right. So we keep them separate in case you guys want to go aftermarket. At least you can actually then not use this idle speed control valve, or if the location changes place, obviously we can use this plug, and we can then even use a 2-wire one if we wanted to. We've got 12 volts and 4 wires going there, so we've got plenty of room for expansion there as well. All right, so and then lastly your gearbox section. So that's going to go down to there, and you've got your selector, you've got your 8-pin solenoid, you've got your output speed, and then you've got your input speed or NCO. So that's the one that goes on this side of the gearbox. Then your selector over there, solenoid over there, output speed sensor over there. All right, so that's that section now. And then don't forget, you do have the power, the main power coming from the starter motor, which comes out there and goes to the positive of your battery as well. Right, I'm just going to move around to this side now. Okay, and then coming around here again, there's like a little bolt hole here that you should be able to clamp onto. So this is actually a 97 motor, yours is a 95 to 97, so it should be exactly the same. So you should be seeing everything that I'm seeing over here. Then this harness carries on along here, and it breaks out underneath there, and that breaks out to go to the TPS sensor over there. All right, so you can either run this sort of down inside there, or if you really want, on your fuel rails, you'll see you've got little mounting points there where you could put P-clamps, and you could actually run this on the top there like that. So completely up to you. You decide how you want to do it. So after that breakout, which goes to the TPS sensor, it comes to the front here, and it breaks out over here. And this is where we have the coolant pressure temp sensor. So I'm going to try and see if I can get in there, but you can see the gray plug over there. So that's the 2-wire coolant temp sensor you see there. That is for the ECU itself. In your case, you've got your own Bosch sensor, and that's going to go in the place of this single wire temp sensor here. So you're going to undo that one, and you're going to put that one in its place. The other things that come out of here that you're going to have to fit is your coil plug goes underneath there, so you have to loosen up the coil to get that in there. And then you've got your cam sensor plug over there. So again, we take out of this side so that we don't end up getting in the way of the fan belt or anything like that, so it keeps it all nice and safe. And then once you scroll down or go along here, you'll have another breakout over here, and that's going to be where your mass airflow sensor breaks out. So we're giving you quite a lot of length there in case you want to put longer pipes or anything like that. And then coming further along down here, we've got another breakout over here, and that's going to then go to your alternator sub harness. So again, we're putting on a 3-pin DTM in case you ever need to change your alternator. So let's say you further down the line, these are very difficult to get, but let's say like your LS400 6-speed ones are easier to get with the 4-pin plug. We can just swap this out and you can swap to that alternator, no problem. All right. And the last piece is just going down to your Lambda sensor. So you've got plenty of room there, and you can use the bolt holes there to keep it all up in place and out of the way. So again, we're staying well clear of the exhaust, okay, on this one. And you'll see you should usually have like brackets and stuff on here that you can clip the harness to and sort of keep it out of harm's way in terms of the exhaust there like that. Right, okay, so that is the complete layout of the harness. So hopefully that's really nice and easy for you to put on your side. In terms of the dash, so we've put these DTM plugs on so we can make your extension. So once you get the harness in, Tom, and you get everything sorted out, just give us a message, tell us how long you need the 6-pin plug to be and the 2-pin plug, then we'll make your little interim harness in between, and you just plug, and then away you go. So we have actually put these particular plugs onto the harness for the dash already. You're just gonna have to wire in the things like, for instance, alternator light. So you'll see at the moment, we've got our alternator light on there as well. And that's already going to the dash, and that's down there. There's your little battery light over there. But the rest of it is just like power and grounds and everything, and your main beams and your indicators and all of that you'll have to add in the back. And there's an analog input available for your fuel level as well. And you've got the speed sensor, which you're gonna wire into your car, and that will go directly into the unit as well. All right, so that's the complete layout. We're gonna come back in a moment and we're gonna do the testing, and part of the testing is we'll go through these wires as well, so you know exactly what is what. So just going to get the engine a little bit warm so we can have some reading on the coolant temp data. So at the moment I've got your sensor plugged in, and obviously we're reading 36 degrees because it's been sitting inside the engine there where the injectors are, so it's picking up a bit of radiant heat there. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to plug it into our coolant temp sensor. The readings are completely off, but you're going to see the temperature rise as the engine runs along. So that's kind of what we're looking for, to make sure that it is actually getting a reading and it is going up and down. All right, so we're back in a second and we'll do the testing. Right, so now we're going to be doing the testing. What we're basically going to do, first I'm going to go through the wires of the plugs there, just so you know what's what and what I'm busy doing as I'm testing out there. So in terms of the testing though, we've got a little sheet that we're going to work through now. So when we switch it on, we're going to make sure the check engine light is working. So that's the little LED inside the fuse box. It does also come out over here. Unfortunately, the dash doesn't have the ability to input that information to light up. So you may want to put a little LED or something next to the dash just for the check engine light, or you could just leave it in the fuse box and use that as your sort of indication. But it's quite useful to have that available to you. All right. Oil pressure light, not applicable, but we're going to be able to see the oil pressure actually on the dash there. Alternator light is going to pop up on the dash, the little red light over here when the ignition goes on. We're going to test the park neutral switch. So we've got a little gearbox selector switch over there, so we're going to make sure it doesn't start unless it's in park or neutral. Then we're going to go through and we're going to test the actual gear position indicator. So what I mean by that is all of these wires are specific to a particular gear, so park, reverse, neutral, drive, 3, 2, and L, and we'll go through that when I go through the wires. But we're going to test each one has got 12 volts when we move the selector along like that. All right. Then we're going to move on to the actual running of the engine, so we're actually going to fire up. Part of that is obviously testing the starter, so we want to make sure that the starter is actually connected and working, so that's good. Fuel pump is controlled by the ECU, so we want to make sure that when we crank and start her up that the fuel pump keeps running, which is easy to tell. Tacho signal, obviously that's going to appear now on the actual dash 2 itself. Coolant temp is going to appear on the dash itself as well. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all of the injectors one by one, and I'm going to quickly pop them off, and we're actually going to hear it misfire from there. Then we're going to go through the codes, how to read the codes, and obviously you'll see when it's running the check engine light will go off. We've got no codes. Even though there's no gearbox plugged in, it just gives no codes and no check engine light for that particular condition, which is why we don't need any sort of automatic transmission emulation for the non-VVTi ECUs to run them as manual. All right, so first thing we're going to do is going to go through the wires, then we're going to start doing all of that. So on this particular plug over here, this is a 9-pin connector. And you will get this, obviously we'll email you a full welcome pack, which includes all your fuse box details, like what fuse is what amperage should be, and what relay does what. But starting on that plug over there, we've got pin 1, which is red, so it's a 14 gauge red wire. That's a permanent 12 volts. Right, so it does need to be a permanent 12 volts because the ECU stores diagnostic codes. So if you put that red one to a ignition 12 volts, you're going to reset the ECU every single time you turn the key off. And it's going to be very difficult to diagnose. I do have a video on how to do diagnostics, specifically with this setup over here. So I'm going to link that in the top there as well, so you can go through that and see that whole procedure. Then we've got black and yellow, so that's going to be a start signal. So again, that's a simple 12-volt signal from either your key barrel, push button start, whichever one you want, basically. No major issue there. Number 3, yellow green, in your case is not going to be applicable. So that's not actually relevant. It is on the fuse box because the fuse box are a standardized setup. In case you guys ever want to sell it on, this fuse box can be allocated to another harness that we've already built, and then everything will work as it should do. Gray 16 gauge wire, that is your fuel pump, so that can actually be taken directly to the 12 volt of your fuel pump. If you feel that the fuel pump requires a load of current, again, it is fused at 20 amps, the fuel pump. Okay, so it shouldn't be a major issue there, but if you do feel that's the way, you can actually use the gray wire to then trigger a relay inside the boot and run a thicker, maybe 14 or 12 gauge wire to the back where your fuel pump is. Yellow and red, that's your check engine light. So again, in this case, obviously you've got the LED in there. We do have the yellow and red wire over there for the check engine light. Obviously we just can't connect to the dash because it doesn't have an input for that. 6 is yellow, which is tacho. Now that is still in place because that's the tacho feed that comes from the igniter. The dash doesn't support the feed from the igniter, and that's why we've taken an IGT signal from the ECU, because the dash can accept a 5-volt level signal, square wave signal. So that's where that's coming from over there. Then we've got black and red is ignition. That's pretty self-explanatory. That's just the ignition feed. If you're using a key barrel, please make sure you don't use the accessory feed, because as you know, the accessory feed will cut off 12 volts as soon as you go into cranking. So basically, if you connect it to that and you go, once you go to cranking, it actually switch the ECU off and the car will never start. Pink blue, that's your charge light or alternator light. So you see in this case, we've got it allocated to the green red wire of your dash. So in your case, you can just run a wire from here to that green red wire behind your dash, and that'll be your alternator light over there. And then we've got yellow black, which is oil pressure. So again, it's actually not connected in your case. So although the fuse box has the provision for it, it's not there, but we do leave everything in just to say it's a generic standardized fuse box for that. All right, moving on to the 12-pin plug. So this is the 12-pin plug over here. So we've got, first one is black and red, and that is going to be park. So that just gives a 12 volts when the vehicle is in park. Red blue is reverse. Again, that just gives a 12 volts when the vehicle is in reverse. So that you'd use for your reverse lights. Red yellow is neutral. So again, it'll give 12 volts when you're in neutral. Now, blue and red is drive. Now, again, really nice and simple. It just supplies the 12 volts when the vehicle is in drive. But this is the wire that you would use for 3. Okay, so what I normally would suggest, if you're not using the shifter from an LS400, run this drive to one side of a switch and the other side of the switch to the black and yellow, which is 3, and that will then put the vehicle into 3. So you're going to go park, reverse, neutral, drive. On the standard shifter, it's park, reverse, neutral, drive, sideways to 3, so they used a micro switch inside the lever. Then you've got 2 and L. So if you don't use that lever, or are using your own sort of custom made lever, just wire a switch and use drive on the one side, 3 on the other side, and then you can flick that button and then you know it's in 3. So it'll only go 1, 2, 3, it won't go into 4th gear. Okay, then we got pink and blue, which is 2. Again, just gives 12 volts when the gearbox is in 2. Orange is low. Again, 12 volts when it's in low. Now, red is your kick down, so you need to put a kick down switch behind the accelerator pedal, and you're going to connect that. Now, the other side of the kick down switch needs to be given a ground. So nice and simple, you can literally just ground it where you mount the kick switch, and the other side goes to the red wire there. The yellow wire is for PWR mode. So if you've seen the original shifter, it had a PWR mode for electronically controlled transmission. So it just needs to be supplied at 12 volts to the yellow wire, and that'll then put it in PWR mode. Black and yellow, that's your 3. So I've already gone through that in terms of the drive and the 3, but this needs a 12 volts to tell the ECU to be in 3rd, or basically it'll only go 1, 2, 3 and not to 4. And then finally you got white and blue, and that is your brake switch. So that one needs to be supplied 12 volts via your brake pedal. We have fused it inside the ECU box, so don't stress too much. When you connect that wire, it still goes through a fuse before it actually goes to the ECU. So don't worry about that issue over there. It'll blow the fuse before it does any damage to the actual ECU itself. Okay, so now we've gone through all of that. What I'm going to do now is we're just going to put the ignition on. So you can see I've got my red wire going to the positive of the battery. I've got my black and red wire over here, and I'm just going to plug that in now. You probably heard all the relays click there. So you can see now we've got our check engine light on the dash over there. Coming over to the dash 2, you can see we've got the red alternator light over there. So that's all working exactly as it should. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to move this gear selector ever so slightly towards me. It's a bit difficult to lean over the other side. Okay. So at the moment it is in park. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to start the engine up, but I'm just going to demonstrate that it does crank over. All right. Now I'm going to move this from park into reverse. You hear the click there. And now, there you go. So that is completely dead. So we are quite happy with the park neutral switch. So we know that works 100%. What I'm going to do now is I forgot that I haven't got my multimeter with me. I'm just going to grab that, and then we are going to go through the park, reverse, neutral, drive, 2 and L indications there. So I'll just be back in a second. Right, so we've got our multimeter back over here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through each gear. So at the time being, we're in park. So we can see that we've got 12 volts over there. Just get my little holder up there and make life easier. So we've got 12 volts over there. I'm going to move from park to reverse. So there we lose. Still in park there. There you go. So now we're in reverse. So now what we're looking for, we're on the black red. So now we're going to find the red blue. So I'm just going to pull that one off there. And then we're going to go into red blue. And you can see there now we've got 12 volts, so we know reverse is working as it should. So we're going to go from park reverse, let's go into neutral. Right, so there's neutral. So now we're going to go over to red yellow. Find red yellow, there she is. Okay. Ooh. Not so easy single-handed. Right, so there we're at 12.7 volts, so that's absolutely fine. So let's go to the next one. So we're on park, reverse, we're on neutral. Let's go over to drive, so I can hear a click there. We've lost 12 volts, and drive is going to be blue red. So let's get our blue red up over here. Throw that in over there. And there we've got our 12 volts again. So I'm just going to go from park, reverse, neutral, drive. Now we're going to go over to 2. You see as I move it, we lose our 12 volts. Now we know 2 is going to be pink and blue. So let's go to pink and blue. And there we got 12 volts with our pink and blue in connected. So let's lastly go to low. And low is going to be orange. So let's get our orange one. Okay. Oh, this is not so easy. There you go, 12.7 volts. So now we're going to go back all the way to park. Obviously we lose all of that. Let's keep that out of the way there. Right, okay, so that's all of the gear position indicators. So I'm happy that every single one here is working exactly as we expect it to. Obviously we don't have OBD2, so we can't test kick down and that, but obviously we've double checked all the wiring to make sure kick down and all of that go to the correct place, and PWR mode, etc. All right, so now we're going to move on to the actual starting of the engine. So again, nice and simple. We're just going to go through what we're going to test. The engine is quite warm, so it should idle quite low. We're going to test the starter, so that's by cranking it, which we've already done. The fuel pump will keep running when she's running, so we know the ECU is controlling her as she should. We'll then go over to the dash and be able to see things like oil pressure, tack, coolant, all of that type of stuff, and that gets the next one, which is coolant temp. Then I'm going to go and unplug all the injectors one by one. And then we're going to go through how to read the codes, and I've already linked you that diagnostic video, so you should be able to click on that one. It'll go into a lot more detail on how to read the diagnostics. So come back in a second and we'll do all the testing. Thank you. We'll be back now. All right, so now we come back for the actual running testing now. So again, we're just going to go through all of that. There's a starter, fuel pump, tack, coolant temp, injector, and ignition. So we're going to run through all of those, and then we're going to go through the code section over there. So start off with, we've got our ignition on. We can tell by the check engine light on and by the alternator light on there. So we're just going to fire it up now. Okay. She is running all sweet. No problems there. Alright, so we're happy with the starter. So now we're going to go over to the tap. So we can actually see our RPMs over there. Okay. So we can also see the oil pressure down there. It's all working on. Okay, so now we're going to go to our injectors. So we've got number 1, number 3, number 5, number 7, coming over here we got number 2, then we got number 4 down inside there, then we got number 6, then we got number 8. So you can also see we got no charge light on and we've got no check engine light on. I'm going to cut the fuel. Right, so we'll let it die now. Alright, before you say anything, it is this pulley that's got this massive noise in it, so don't stress, it's not the engine, there's any sort of trouble. Alright, so that's all great. She runs nice and smooth. We've had her up to full temperature and everything, so we know she runs absolutely fine. We know the idle control valve works because she holds a really smooth idle. And for your guys' own future reference, these obviously fuel pulsation dampers. Now, they tell you pretty much the nice, easy way to tell if you've got fuel pressure. This little screw here actually rises up, so you may have seen that in the video from prior. This one over here is actually a fuel pressure regulator. So obviously it has a vacuum source at the top there like that. And then on the very old ones, that used to be on the front here and used to have another fuel pulsation damper at the back. From 95 onwards, they changed to just having the fuel pressure regulator and the pulsation damper over there. Right, so obviously we have no codes to read. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to read the codes quickly. Again, please refer back to previous where I gave the link to the full-on 1UZ non-VTI diagnostics video, and especially considering you have this setup, it'll go in great detail. But it is super nice and easy. So if you look at your fuse box there, you'll see there is a open fuse over there. All right, and what I normally do is this is your STA fuse or starter fuse. So if you take this out, it won't start, just bear that in mind. But all you got to do is it's just conveniently located next to it. You take that out over there, and as I bridge it over here, you're going to see the check engine light's going to go off, and it's going to start flashing codes. So we've got 1, 2, and then we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's 27, and then it's going to do 29. Okay. And then when you let go, you'll see it goes back on solid in a second. Right, we'll let it do its thing quickly. Right, so anyway, so you're going to read the codes exactly like you would Morse code. They're just going to go straight on there, and you'll see there it goes back to there. Now be very careful with that, because when you go into diagnostic mode, by doing that, you also lock the timing at 10 degrees. So just be aware of doing that. Don't just leave a fuse in there and think everything's fine because it's got the cover on and you can't see the light flashing in your eye or whatever like that. Don't do that, because you are going to lock the timing at 10 degrees. Reason being is so you can check the timing without having to actually remove any of the major covers. Obviously you do need to get this off because you need to get a spark plug cylinder 1, and you'll see down on your crank pulley there you've got 0, 5, 10 and 15 degrees. On your crank pulley itself you do have a marking, which you can see on the top here. We've actually marked that out nicely with white paint, so we're able to see it really nice when we do check timing on the aftermarket ECUs. So yeah, so don't ever leave that diagnostic port bridged, because if you do, you're going to have 10 degrees of timing and it's not going to run very well and you're not going to have a good time. All right, so top, everything is working exactly as we expect it to. The dash all works, everything is sweet. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get this all boxed up and get it over to you. If any of you else have any questions you'd like to answer, either message us on Facebook or put some comments down below. But anything sort of technical or quote related has to go to our Facebook page. But Tom, we'll get it all boxed up, get it over to you, and then we'll be in touch as soon as you're ready for us to make the lengths of harness to go between the dash and the actual engine harness itself. All right, but thanks for watching guys, and we'll see you again later. Bye bye.